A group of wealthy people are desperately fleeing, and one woman, in her panic, thinks hiding in the bathroom will save her. Unexpectedly, a strange noise comes from below the toilet, as if something unusual is approaching. Accompanied by a miserable scream, the woman is dragged into the toilet by a ghostly force. No one could have imagined that this ship, claimed to be the most luxurious cruise in the world, would encounter an unprecedented crisis. Just minutes ago, this was a place where the upper class indulged and squandered freely. While the wealthy were recklessly entertaining themselves, a figure quietly slipped into the control room. Using a few disks, he loaded new commands, causing the cruise ship's power and communication systems to fail. In the captain's words, they were like deaf and mute people floating on the sea. At this moment, the communicator brought even worse news. A big object was rapidly approaching below the cruise ship. As the countdown ended, the cruise ship was violently hit, and the unprepared tourists fell to the ground one after another. A lifeboat also fell into the sea. Once the yacht stabilized, the usually polite wealthy individuals began to scatter in panic, and the Asian woman who hid in the restroom became the first passenger to be eliminated from the ship. The chaos on the cruise continued. Not far away on the sea surface, a speedboat was waving through the storm. Captain Negan was an experienced smuggler, and that day he received a big order to deliver a shipment to the red zone. The clever Negan didn't ask what the cargo was, as the dark-faced client seemed not to be trifled with. However, his deputy, R. couldn't resist his curiosity and sneaked into the warehouse. He opened one of the crates, only to find a torpedo inside. There are more than a dozen similar boxes. Arle is very curious about what these people are up to, but suddenly a figure appears behind him. It's the black subordinate brought by the employer, and it seems Arle is in for a beating tonight. Suddenly, a few cold arrows flew towards the black boss's face. Naturally, Negan wouldn't let his deputy be bullied, and the atmosphere on the scene was tense. The black boss clearly valued tonight's task more, so he signaled his men to calm down. Negan guessed that these people were definitely up to no good and just wanted to quickly complete the task and leave. Perhaps he was too anxious and didn't notice the lifeboat ahead. Under the violent impact, a large hole appeared at the front of the speedboat. Fortunately, they extinguished the fire quickly enough, preventing the torpedoes in the cargo hold from igniting. At this moment, the female assistant made an unexpected discovery. A large cruise ship was stopped on the sea ahead, and perhaps they could borrow some tools and parts from there to repair the speedboat. Negan looked hesitant, but the henchmen of the Black Boss all brandished their weapons. Negan instantly understood that the target of these guys was the cruise ship. Under the pressure of the Black Boss, Negan maneuvered the speedboat quickly towards the cruise ship. Feeling the distance was about right, one of the subordinates remotely opened the left hatch using a computer, while the others took out the boarding equipment they had prepared in advance. In less than 5 minutes, they successfully boarded the cruise ship. To find parts to repair the speedboat, the boss specifically brought Negan and Arle along, while the others were responsible for eliminating the ship's guards. What was surprising was that, besides the mess all over the floor, there wasn't a single person in the hall. Everyone looked at each other in confusion, wondering what had happened here. Suddenly, there was a noise from the elevator behind them. Everyone cautiously approached, but when the elevator doors opened, there was only blood on the floor. Where did the passengers on the ship go? The boss did not give up on the dream of getting rich overnight and instructed his men to split up. Negan and Arle went to the lower-level engine room to look for spare parts, while he himself went to the cruise ship's control room, hoping to find some useful clues there. At the same time, the female assistant who stayed on the speedboat to patch the hole suddenly noticed movement in the water. Just as she was about to call her companions to take a look, a bloated, pale corpse suddenly surfaced. The female assistant was so frightened that she swallowed several mouthfuls of water. Just as she managed to regain her composure, a tremendous force suddenly came from behind her. On the other side, Negan and Arle are sorting through repair parts in the engine room. The robber on guard notices some movement from the other side, raises his weapon, and cautiously walks over to check, unaware that the water has risen past his knees. The robber grows increasingly nervous, feeling a huge threat lurking in the water. Suddenly, several bubbles emerge, and the robber is forcefully dragged into the water. After a scream, his weapon flies in front of Negan, leaving everyone bewildered as they look around. The remaining long-haired robber suspected that Negan was up to something. But Negan felt there was something else here. The long-haired robber told him to shut up quickly, saying this must be reported to the boss. The call hadn't connected yet when a sudden force from underwater dragged the robber into the water, drifting away. Negan watched as the person turned into a pool of blood, finally realizing there was a terrifying monster hidden in the water. At this point, he no longer cared about collecting any parts and urged Ale to lead quickly. In a sealed warehouse not far away, a woman in red woke up from unconsciousness. Her name is Jenny. She went through great lengths to get on the cruise ship, not for fun. She successfully stole an access card from the captain, but unfortunately, after finally sneaking into the vault, she was caught by the captain and his men and thus locked in the warehouse. However, this also allowed her to escape a disaster. She removed her earrings and sabotaged the access control circuit. But just as she escaped the warehouse, she ran into the gang of the Black Boss. Jenny, though flustered, remained calm and claimed to be the captain's assistant. However, the Black Boss wasn't fooled and immediately questioned where the other passengers went. Little Black took the opportunity to grab the access card, preparing to loot the vault here. As soon as the door opened, a tiger head flew in from the air. The robber started shooting inside, but fortunately, the boss stops him in time, barely saving the lives of the cruise owner and the captain. Amid the chaos, he heard something about a monster coming, and then gunfire came through the walkie-talkie, indicating that subordinates elsewhere were in danger. Taking advantage of the distraction, Jenny quietly escaped the scene. She was about to take the elevator to the lower level when she unexpectedly encountered Negan and his companion, who had just escaped. Negan advised her not to wander around, warning that there were terrifying monsters outside. Just then, a slithering sound came from above the elevator, confirming Negan's words. At that moment, the elevator doors opened again, and it was the group led by the boss who had arrived. Nigel urged everyone to unite, and the captain and the boss agreed. Although the gang leader hadn't seen the monster himself, he somewhat believed it. Suddenly, the elevator began to shake violently, followed by a loud crash, and the elevator plummeted downward like a runaway horse. Fortunately, the cruise ship's floors were not high, and when they reached the third basement level, everyone was thrown out of the elevator by a tremendous force. If they hadn't confirmed they were alive, they would have thought they had arrived in hell. The walls were covered with sticky blood, and in front of them were scattered human bones in various postures. Before everyone could regain their composure, the corridor suddenly experienced a powerful squeeze, and the heavy iron sheets twisted and deformed as if pulled by a bowstring. Megan and the others were terrified, shouting as they retreated backward. It wasn't until they closed the heavy isolation door that the force dissipated into nothingness. Everyone was talking at once about what this monster could be. Someone suggested asking the nearby Navy for help, but the captain said their communication system was damaged. He suspected there was a mole on the ship. Negan instantly guessed the truth. The mole must be the cruise ship owner. The boss simply laid his cards on the table, admitting to a partnership with the cruise ship owner. He was responsible for robbing the wealthy passengers on board, while the owner was dissatisfied with the high operating costs of the cruise ship, as ticket sales alone couldn't turn a profit, so he collaborated with the boss to stage a show. As long as this cruise ship is blown up by the hijackers, he can obtain a huge insurance payout. The captain was so angry he could explode. Having such a boss was the worst luck ever. Ale was watching the commotion from the side when something suddenly floated down from above. Curious, he looked up, and a giant tentacle rolled towards him. Negan instinctively raised his gun and fired. The tentacle stung and spat out the corroded silhouette, causing everyone to break out in a cold sweat. They raised their guns and fired rapidly into the air, but the cabin was filled with tentacles, so they could only fight while retreating. Negan and Jenny happened to bump into each other and took the opportunity to discuss a cooperation deal. As long as Negan could help her escape, she would agree to anything he wanted. Suddenly, a tentacle flew over, and Negan fell to the ground, planning to pick up a weapon from the floor. The commotion angered the tentacle, and just as it revealed its terrifying fangs, Jenny lunged back with her gun, firing a barrage of bullets that drove the monster away, allowing Negan to escape danger. It was only then that he remembered the previous request for a deal and quickly nodded in agreement. On the other side, the captain also encountered an attack from the tentacle monster. By the time Negan and the others arrived, the captain had unfortunately been knocked down to the deck below, and everyone could only helplessly fire bullets. When the commotion subsided, the frustrated boss complained, "What on earth is this damn thing?" The cruise ship owner, being knowledgeable, speculated that this was a giant octopus from ancient times, and the deeper the sea it lived in, the larger its size. Everyone recalled the captain's earlier introduction, and now they were in a sea area with a depth of 10,000 meters. Everyone tacitly stopped discussing it further. Negan just wanted to quickly return to his speedboat with the parts, but the road ahead was flooded with seawater. It seemed everyone would have to swim across. At the thought of the giant octopus lurking underwater, everyone couldn't help but shiver, but Nigen understood that going home required taking risks. The next moment, he plunged into the water. Once someone took the lead, the braver ones followed suit, leaving only a few cautious ones hesitating. At this moment, a loud noise came from behind. The giant octopus tentacles were chasing them. Ale hurriedly closed the heavy isolation door, but unfortunately it was quickly pushed open by the giant tentacle. A few people immediately opened fire, temporarily driving back the monster. Afterward, they quickly jumped into the sea, but the black robber at the back was unlucky and got caught by a tentacle. Before dying, he pulled the pin on a grenade, dealing a significant blow to the octopus monster. After facing deadly attacks one after another, the motor guy was almost scared out of his wits and insisted on staying put to wait for rescue. However, Negan thought it was unwise. The octopus is very intelligent and would surely find a way to break through. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone's eyes froze. The mobile guy seemed to sense something was wrong, and without turning his head, he raised his gun and fired. The tentacle monster recoiled in pain, spraying alcohol over the pipes. But before the mobile guy could catch his breath, another tentacle appeared and swallowed him whole. Negan and the others frantically fled along the corridor, but the monster kept creating unexpected obstacles, altering their route. Whether intentional or not, they were eventually forced to a stop in front of an iron door. The cruise ship owner indicated that the hall was just ahead. Negan cautiously stepped forward and was immediately stunned by the scene before him. He saw piles of corroded human skeletons, presumably brought here by the octopus monster. Suddenly, there was a crashing sound from ahead and a large amount of seawater rushed in. The cruise ship owner had malicious intentions and blocked the iron door they came through, leaving the surviving Negan and others to scatter and each find an exit. As the water level in the corridor rose higher and the octopus monster quickly approached, the Black Boss threw a grenade, but instead of retreating, the tentacle monster accelerated. The Black Boss steeled himself and shot Al in the leg, hoping his death would buy him some time. Ala was also a clever one. He hid in a trash can before the monster attacked. As the saying goes, fortunes change. When Ala limped into the hall, he unexpectedly saw the boss's handgun. Just as he was about to pick it up, a hand landed on him. It turned out the boss had been caught by the monster. Ala was so scared he turned to run, but then he thought the boss was pitiful, so he handed the gun to him, asking for a quick end. Surprisingly, the boss aimed the gun at Ala. Fortunately, the bullet didn't hit, so the boss had to aim the gun at himself. But unexpectedly, the bullets were all gone, and it seemed he could only die in endless torment. In contrast, Negan and Jenny were luckier. They climbed to the deck through another passage and landed steadily on a speedboat via the lift. Since they couldn't get the repair parts, Negan asked Jenny to go to the cruise ship to find a motorboat for escape, while he figured out a way to kill the octopus monster. The dozen torpedoes in the speedboat came in handy. At this time, the assistant Al also returned. The two of them worked together to set the speedboat to automatic navigation so that after making a turn, it would crash into the cruise ship and blow up the octopus monster inside. Seeing that the preparations were almost complete, Negan asked Ale to stay behind to finish up while he went to check on Jenny. Meanwhile, Jenny did not disappoint. She finally found a key for a jet ski, but unexpectedly, the cruise ship owner suddenly jumped out, threatening Jenny with a gun to hand over the key. Jenny was almost speechless. There was more than one jet ski, so why fight over this one? As the two were fiercely struggling, Negan rushed over with a gun, firing a bullet that didn't hit the owner, indicating he didn't want to kill him. At this moment, the entertainment hall shook violently, and countless tentacles emerged from the deck. Immediately after, a giant mass of flesh appeared. Negan and the others were stunned as they finally saw the octopus monster's true form. Before Negan could recover from the shock, his legs were entangled by tentacles, and an irresistible force gathered from all directions. Negan only saw a gaping maw approaching him, with enormous eyes emitting a faint blue light. At the critical moment, Negan pulled out a rebound gun and directly blasted the octopus's eye. The octopus in pain dropped Negan, and he quickly escaped to the speedboat, but the broken glass and disgusting slime in the cockpit indicated that Ale was in grave danger. Negan had no choice but to activate the speedboat's autopilot function himself, then quickly ran back to the cruise ship to meet up with Jenny. At this moment, the cruise ship owner happened to run onto the deck. He saw the just-started speedboat and jumped down without hesitation. Even though he broke his leg and many lives were lost here, the owner crawled into the cockpit laughing wildly, only to despairingly find that the speedboat set to autopilot couldn't be manually controlled. Meanwhile, Negan was rushing with Jenny at full speed. The octopus monster's tentacles were relentlessly pursuing from behind. It continuously pulled the trigger, opened the elevator door in advance, and finally shook off the big guy behind. Meanwhile, the speedboat had already turned around and was heading towards the cruise ship. The boss watched in utter despair as the speedboat headed straight for the cruise ship. Blazing flames shot up into the sky as Negan and Jenny rushed out of the cruise ship at the last critical moment. The once lively octopus monster also turned into Glue's octopus in the flames. Negan and Jenny eventually ended up on a deserted island, but unfortunately, the motorboat was completely damaged. Just as they were preparing to settle there, a person floated over the sea. It was the miraculously surviving Ale. The three of them happily gathered together, but suddenly a monster's roar came from behind, as if something big was quickly approaching. That's all for the content of Extremely Cold. This movie was released in the year, and at the time, it absolutely outshone other similar works. Unfortunately, after nearly 30 years, a sequel has not been seen. It is said that the island Negan finally reached is Skull Island, where King Kong resides, but it's unclear if this is true. Friends who know the inside story, please leave a comment for discussion. See you next time.